Imagine for a second the heartbeat of the global economy suddenly flatlining. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow, jagged choke point where the world's energy supply breathes, just became the stage for a nightmare scenario that military planners have been losing sleep over for decades. We aren't talking about a minor skirmish or a routine patrol gone wrong. We are talking about a high-velocity, high-stakes aerial execution that has reportedly left 5 of the most advanced attack helicopters on the planet, the US AH-64 Apache, smoldering in the salt air. If the claims coming out of Tehran are even half true, the rules of engagement in the Middle East didn't just change, they were incinerated. The silence from the Pentagon right now is deafening, but the smoke rising over the Iranian coastline tells a story of a mission that went sideways in the most violent way possible. You need to stay with me on this, because what happened in those frantic minutes above the waves isn't just a localized clash, it is a blueprint for a much larger, much darker escalation that could pull the entire region into a vacuum of fire. But here is where it gets truly unsettling. This wasn't a random accident. According to the narratives flooding out of regional Iranian media, this was a calculated, preemptive strike by US forces that met a defensive wall they simply weren't prepared for. We're looking at a sequence of events that feels more like a Tom Clancy fever dream than a standard Tuesday in the Gulf. The Apache is the longbow of the sky, a digital predator designed to eat tanks and shred coastal defenses before they even know they're being painted by radar. And yet, the reports suggest that 5 of these multi-million-dollar war machines were swatted out of the sky during a mission that was supposed to dismantle Iran's Iron Curtain along the coast. It raises a terrifying question. Has Iran's domestic missile technology finally caught up to Western air superiority? Or was this a trap laid out with surgical precision waiting for the Americans to take the bait? Let's pull back the curtain on the mission itself. The target wasn't just military installations. That's the sanitized version. If you read between the lines of the Iranian claims, the Apaches were hunting the crown jewels of Iran's asymmetric strategy, the coastal missile batteries and naval surveillance hubs that keep the Strait of Hormuz under a perpetual shadow. These are the sites that can flip a switch and stop global oil transit in an afternoon. The Apaches reportedly moved in low, hugging the wave tops to avoid long-range radar, their pilots likely focused on the glowing green screens of their target acquisition designation sites. They were looking for the launchers, the mobile units that Iran hides in the rugged, sun-bleached cliffs of the shoreline. The initial reports say the strikes were successful. Explosions rocked the coast. Storage facilities turned into infernos. The Apache's Hellfire missiles found their marks, and for a few minutes, it looked like the mission was a total success. But that's exactly when the tide turned. And this is the part no one is talking about. The moment those missiles impacted, the Iranian side didn't just retreat. They went live with a layered defense network that most analysts didn't think was this integrated. We're talking about a saturated environment. In the blink of an eye, the sky over the strait went from a silent hunting ground to a chaotic web of radar locks and optical tracking. Imagine being in the cockpit of one of those Apaches. You've just expended your primary ordnance, you're banking hard to egress back to the safety of the fleet, and suddenly every alarm in your helmet is screaming. Your flares are firing automatically, the chaff is clouding the air, but the tracking won't break. Iranian claims suggest they used a lethal cocktail of radar-guided missiles and electro-optical systems, the kind that don't give off a radar signature until it's too late. What happens next changes everything. The Iranian narrative describes a turning point, a cold, clinical, systematic takedown. One by one, the reports claim the Apaches were engaged. This wasn't a dogfight, it was an execution from the ground up. The sheer tempo of the confrontation is what catches the eye of every geopolitical analyst watching this. If 5 helicopters were hit as claimed, we are looking at a catastrophic failure of suppression of enemy air defenses. It suggests that the Iranians have developed a way to blind the Apache's sophisticated sensor suites or simply overwhelm them with volume. Think about the optics of that. 5 of the world's most feared attack platforms neutralized in a single engagement. The psychological impact alone is a tectonic shift. It sends a message to every carrier strike group in the region. The no-fly zone isn't yours anymore. But let's be real for a second, this is still a fog of war situation. While Iranian media is trumpeting this as a historic victory, the level of actual destruction is where the mystery lies. Were they destroyed or were they forced down? Did they limp back to base with holes in their airframes, or are they currently sitting at the bottom of the Gulf, becoming expensive artificial reefs? The uncertainty is actually more dangerous than the truth. In the world of high-stakes brinkmanship, the perception of a hit is almost as powerful as the hit itself. If the regional players believe the US is vulnerable, the restraint that has kept a lid on this powder keg for years could evaporate overnight. We are seeing emergency units, security details, and damage control teams swarming the Iranian coast, and the smoke is still visible on satellite imagery. This isn't just propaganda. Something very real and very violent happened on that shoreline. The stakes? They couldn't be higher. We aren't just talking about hardware. We're talking about the men and women in those cockpits and the terrifying escalation ladder that follows an event like this. If the US loses 5 Apaches, the response isn't going to be a diplomatic letter. It's going to be a hammer blow. But if Iran successfully defended its territory against a direct offensive strike, they've just gained a level of leverage they haven't had since the 1970s. The Strait of Hormuz is only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. It is a knife's edge. And right now both sides are pressing their weight against that blade. But here is where it gets more serious. The Iranian claims emphasize that these helicopters weren't on a routine patrol. They were conducting offensive missions. That's a specific choice of words. It frames the US as the aggressor in a way that forces the hand of international law and regional alliances. It's a narrative trap. If the US acknowledges the mission, they admit to an act of war. If they deny it, they have to explain where 5 of their elite aircraft went. It is a masterful piece of information warfare being played out in real time. And while the world watches the coastal fires, the real battle is happening in the corridors of power in Tehran and Washington, where the next move is being debated behind closed doors. Look at the geography. The Iranian coastline is a fortress of natural rock and hidden bunkers. The Apache is designed for this, sure, but it's a machine, not a god. In a contested environment where the defender has the home field advantage and a nothing-to-lose attitude, even the best tech can fail. Analysts are now scrambling to figure out if Iran has deployed a new version of their Bavar 373 or perhaps a more mobile, man-portable system that the Apaches didn't see coming. The technical analysis of this clash will be studied in war colleges for the next 50 years. How did 5 separate aircraft, likely operating in a coordinated formation, all succumb to defensive fire? It implies a level of synchronization in Iranian command and control that we haven't seen before. As the sun sets over the strait, the tension isn't dissipating, it's thickening. Every radar screen from Dubai to Muscat is glowing with activity. We are seeing reports of increased alert levels, naval assets moving into intercept positions, and a total blackout of civilian air traffic in certain sectors. This is the breathing room before the next explosion. The Iranian side is calling this a successful interception, a term that carries a lot of weight. It suggests they didn't just survive, they dominated the encounter. Whether that's 100% accurate or a highly polished version of the truth, doesn't change the reality that the balance of power in the most critical maritime corridor on Earth just took a massive hit. You have to wonder, what was the ultimate goal of the Apache mission? If it was to neutralize the missile threat and it resulted in the loss of the strike force, then the mission was a strategic disaster. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Now the Iranian missile batteries are still there, they're battle-tested, and they have the scalp of 5 Apaches to show for it. The recovery efforts on the ground in Iran are already being framed as a show of resilience. They're fixing the broken walls, they're clearing the debris from the initial strikes, and they're doing it all while the world's cameras are pointed at them. It's a masterclass in turning a tactical hit into a strategic victory. The next 48 hours won't just decide the fate of this specific conflict, they may decide what the world looks like next. If this escalates into a full-scale naval confrontation, the global economy will feel the tremors within hours. We are standing on the edge of a precipice, looking down into a dark, volatile sea. The Apache incident isn't just a headline, it's a warning shot. It's a signal that the high-tempo warfare of the future is already here, and it is far more lethal, far more unpredictable, and far more costly than anyone dared to imagine. As the reports continue to trickle in and the satellite feeds reveal the true extent of the damage, one thing is certain, the Strait of Hormuz will never be the same again. The world is holding its breath, waiting to see who blinks first in this high-stakes game of shadows and steel. And the most terrifying part? We might not have to wait long to find out.